History is not written by the peaceful, it is carved by the expansionists. In 2026, the silence of the Middle East was shattered not by a fluke, but by a calculated, cold-blooded provocation. For decades, the world was told that the only democracy in the region was a shield against chaos. But as the first missiles struck Iranian soil, the shield was cast aside, revealing a jagged sword. The world is finally seeing the face of a terror state, a machine that has moved beyond defense into the realm of absolute annihilation. Why would they risk a global inferno? Because the map they follow is not the one recognized by the UN. It is an ancient, ambitious blueprint known as Greater Israel. This is the beginning of the end of the Shadow War. This is the moment the world wakes up to the cost of a biblical expansion. The strikes on Iran were not just military operations. They were psychological warfare designed to humiliate and incite. Imagine the sheer audacity. Bypassing international airspace, ignoring every diplomatic warning, and striking at the heart of a sovereign nation's pride. This wasn't about neutralizing a threat. It was about starting a fire that cannot be put out. For years, Israel has operated under a cloak of victimhood. But in 2026, the mask has completely disintegrated. When you target civilian infrastructure, when you assassinate diplomats, and when you openly mock the sovereignty of your neighbors, you are no longer a nation defending itself. You are a terror state using high-tech weaponry to hold the world hostage. The strategy is clear. Provoke Iran into a massive retaliation, then cry for help to the United States. It is a cycle of violence fueled by arrogance. But this time, the world isn't just watching the explosions. They are watching the children buried under rubble, the hospitals targeted by precision strikes, and the systematic destruction of human dignity. This incitement was designed to force a total war, a war where the rules of engagement are written in blood, and the only goal is the total removal of anyone standing in the way of Zionist expansion. The invincible shield has become an aggressive hammer, and the first blow has already landed. To understand why Iran was targeted, you must understand the ideology driving the current leadership in Jerusalem. It isn't about borders drawn in 1948 or 1967. It is about a radical, expansionist vision called Greater Israel, Eretz Yisrael Hashlema. This plan doesn't stop at the West Bank or Gaza. It looks at the map of the Middle East and sees a future empire that stretches from the Nile to the Euphrates. Iran is the only wall standing in the way of this empire. By attempting to destabilize Tehran, Israel isn't just fighting a rival. It is clearing the path for a territorial grab that would redefine the world map. This is why the aggression has shifted. This is why the rhetoric has become so toxic. The terror state isn't interested in peace treaties. It is interested in Lebensraum, living space, at the expense of millions of Arabs and Persians. Every settlement built, every olive grove destroyed, and every missile fired at Iran is a piece of this larger puzzle. The world has been blind to this agenda for too long, distracted by the propaganda of security. But you cannot talk about security while you are actively colonizing your neighbors. You cannot talk about peace while your generals openly discuss the annexation of sovereign lands. The quest for Greater Israel is the engine of this 2026 conflict. It is a hunger that cannot be satisfied, a drive that views every person in the region as either a subject or an obstacle. As we stand on the brink of a third world war, we must ask, is the world ready to bleed for one nation's ancient expansionist dream? But to know where this hatred comes from, we have to look back. Because there was a time when the lion and the shield were not enemies, but brothers in arms. A time of secret deals, oil for weapons, and a partnership that the world was never supposed to know about. In the 1960s and 70s, under the reign of Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, Iran and Israel were closer than most NATO allies. It was a simple, brutal, and effective deal. Oil for weapons. At a time when the Arab world was trying to choke Israel with oil embargoes, it was Iran, a fellow non-Arab power, that kept the lights on in Tel Aviv. Up to 60% of Israel's oil came from Iranian tankers, flowing through the secret Eilat-Ashkelon Pipeline. In return, Israel didn't just send money, they sent the future. Israeli engineers and military advisors were everywhere in Iran. They were building Iranian agriculture, training Iranian doctors, and most importantly, they were building the Iranian military. But the deepest secret was Project Flower, Operation Tsirkan. This was a multi-billion-dollar joint military venture where Israel and Iran worked together to develop advanced surface-to-surface missiles. Missiles that were designed to potentially carry nuclear warheads. Yes, the very missile technology that Iran uses today to threaten Israel was born from a partnership with Israel itself. They saw themselves as an alliance of the periphery. Both were non-Arab nations surrounded by a sea of hostile Arab states. They weren't just neighbors, they were strategic twins. Israeli prime ministers like Ben-Gurion and Yitzhak Rabin were welcomed in Tehran like royalty. This was a time when El Al flights between Tel Aviv and Tehran were as common as flights to New York. The partnership was so deep that even the Shah's notorious secret police, Savak, was trained by the Mossad and the CIA. They shared the same enemies, the same secrets, and the same blood-stained tactics. This wasn't a relationship built on love. It was built on power, and for a while, it worked perfectly. But every golden age has its sunset, and for this brotherhood, the sun didn't just set, it crashed. The 1979 Islamic Revolution didn't just change Iran, it rewrote the destiny of the Middle East. When Ayatollah Khomeini stepped off that plane in Tehran, the first thing he did was burn the bridge to Israel. The Israeli embassy was handed over to the PLO, and the Star of David was replaced by the Palestinian flag. Overnight, the strategic twin became the little Satan. But here is the twist that history books often ignore. The divorce wasn't as clean as the propaganda suggests. Even after the revolution, during the 1980s Iran-Iraq war, the secret deals continued. Israel, desperate to see its enemy Iraq defeated, secretly sold spare parts and weapons to the very regime that was publicly calling for its destruction. This was the infamous Iran-Contra era, where survival outweighed ideology. However, as the 90s approached, the proxy war began. Iran realized that to lead the Muslim world, it had to become the champion of the Palestinian cause. Israel, on the other hand, began to see a nuclear-capable Iran as its only existential threat. The friendship was buried under layers of religious rhetoric and geopolitical competition. The greater Israel ambition of one side collided with the Islamic hegemony of the other. Today's conflict is fueled by the bitterness of a former lover. Iran knows Israel's tactics because it once learned them from Israel. Israel fears Iran's missiles because it once helped design their ancestors. The hatred we see today is so intense because it is personal. It is the result of a brotherhood that turned into a blood feud. As the missiles cross the sky in 2026, they aren't just carrying explosives. They are carrying the weight of 50 years of betrayal. The secrets of the past have become the weapons of the present, and the world is paying the price for a partnership that went horribly wrong. But while the history is dark, the future is even darker. Because the goal has shifted. This is no longer about oil or old debts. It is about a radical new map. A map where one side must disappear for the other to survive. Next in Part 3, the evil shift. Power doesn't just corrupt, it blinds. For decades, the world was sold a narrative of a small nation fighting for its survival. But in 2026, that narrative has been incinerated by the fires of reality. We are no longer looking at a defense force. We are looking at an ideological machine gone rogue. The shift from security to expansion is complete. This isn't about borders anymore. It's about a radical, messianic vision that views every neighbor as an obstacle and every human life as collateral. The world is witnessing the rise of an evil shift, a strategy where a terror state is willing to drag the entire planet into a nuclear winter just to carve out a map that exists only in ancient scrolls. This is the dark heart of the conflict. The absolute, unwavering pursuit of Greater Israel. What is Greater Israel? To the average person, it sounds like a conspiracy theory. But to the radical elite in power today, it is a non-negotiable destiny. This is the Eretz Yisrael Hashlema, a map that doesn't stop at the 1967 borders, or even the borders of today. In its most extreme form, it envisions a territory stretching from the Nile in Egypt to the Euphrates in Iraq. This isn't just a dream. It is a systematic project of colonization and erasure. When we see the relentless strikes on Iran, we aren't just seeing a military operation. We are seeing the removal of the last standing wall. Iran is the only regional power with the military teeth to say no to this expansion. By branding Iran as the eternal enemy, the terror state justifies the destruction of any nation that stands in its way. Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and now Iran. They are all being systematically destabilized to create a vacuum. A vacuum that Greater Israel intends to fill. The world watches as hospitals are turned into battlefields and schools into rubble, all under the guise of eliminating threats. But the truth is much more sinister. This is about Lebensraum, living space. It is a slow-motion ethnic cleansing that is now accelerated into a full-scale regional war. They are not just fighting Hamas or Hezbollah. They are fighting the very idea of any sovereign power existing beside them. The evil shift has turned a nation into an empire builder that uses the trauma of the past to justify the atrocities of the present. They are gambling with the lives of 8 billion people to fulfill a territorial fantasy that belongs in the Dark Ages. The most terrifying part of this evil shift isn't just the regional destruction. It's the global blackmail. The terror state knows that it cannot achieve Greater Israel alone. It needs the muscle, the money, and the blood of the West. By intentionally provoking Iran into a corner, they have effectively taken the world economy hostage. They know that if Iran retaliates, the US is forced to step in. They are using the American military as their personal janitor to clean up the messes they purposefully create. This is the ultimate evil in the shift. The willingness to trigger World War III to satisfy a local land grab. We are seeing oil prices skyrocket, global supply chains collapse, and the threat of nuclear escalation become a daily headline. And for what? So that a radicalized leadership can claim a few more miles of scorched earth? The terror state has successfully weaponized its own victimhood to silence any international criticism. If you speak against the expansion, you are labeled. If you speak for the victims, you are silenced. But look at the cost. The world is being dragged into a conflict it didn't ask for. Europe is shivering without energy. The global South is starving due to disrupted trade, and the US Treasury is being drained to fund a war that brings zero benefit to the American people. This is the global hostage crisis of 2026. The architects of this war are not just burning Tehran. They are burning the global order. They are betting that the world is too afraid to call them out. They are betting that we will keep paying the price in blood and taxes until their greater Israel is finally realized. But as the smoke reaches the stratosphere, the world is starting to ask, why are we all dying for someone else's map? The mask is off. The agenda is clear. But as the world burns, the question remains, how does this end? Are we heading towards a nuclear sunrise, or is there a way to wake up from this nightmare? Next in the final part, the conclusion. A wake-up call for a world on the brink. We are standing at the edge of a cliff, and the ground is crumbling. What started as a shadow war and escalated into a regional bloodbath for greater Israel is now staring the entire human race in the face. This isn't a movie. There is no reset button. In 2026, the arrogance of a few leaders has put the survival of billions on the line. As we watch the skyline of the Middle East glow with the light of explosions, we must ask ourselves, is this the world we want to leave behind? Or have we become so numb to the propaganda that we are willing to sleepwalk into our own extinction? This is the final reckoning. This is the truth that no one wants to hear, but everyone needs to understand. The most terrifying phrase in modern warfare is existential threat. It is the ultimate excuse for the ultimate crime. As the terror state pushes deeper into Iranian territory to fulfill its expansionist dream, it is playing a game of nuclear chicken. Iran, cornered and facing the total destruction of its sovereignty, has only one card left to play. For years, the world debated Iran's nuclear capabilities. But in 2026, the debate is over. We are no longer talking about if. We are talking about when. The evil shift we discussed at the previous part has created a scenario where neither side can afford to lose. When a nation fueled by messianic visions of greater Israel meets a regime fueled by revolutionary survival, the result is a zero-sum game. If a nuclear warhead is ever launched, it won't just hit a city, it will hit the soul of humanity. The radioactive fallout won't respect the borders of the map they are fighting over. It will poison the air from Mumbai to New York. This is the price of silence. By allowing a terror state to operate without accountability, the global community has allowed a regional fire to become a planetary threat. We have entered the era of hyperwar, where AI-driven drones and hypersonic missiles can trigger a nuclear exchange in seconds, leaving no time for diplomacy. The invincible shield will not save us from a nuclear winter. The bunkers will not save the elite from the collapse of the biosphere. We are gambling with the only planet we have, all for a few hundred miles of disputed land and an ancient prophecy. The shadow of the mushroom cloud is no longer a relic of the Cold War. It is the daily weather forecast of 2026. But you don't have to wait for a nuclear blast to feel the sting of this war. You are paying for it every single day. Look at your grocery bills. Look at your fuel prices. Look at the crumbling infrastructure in your own cities while billions of dollars are shipped across the ocean to fund this destruction. This is the war tax that every human being on Earth is paying right now. The global economy is being bled dry to maintain a conflict that serves only the few. This is the wake-up call. The Greater Israel Project and the Iranian resistance are not just Middle Eastern problems. They are the reason your pension fund is collapsing. They are the reason the world is tilting toward a total financial reset. We have been distracted by us versus them narratives while the architects of chaos laugh all the way to the bank. The defense contractors are seeing record profits while you are seeing record inflation. Wake up. The blood being spilled in the streets of Tehran and the ruins of Gaza is a mirror of our own future if we don't demand an end to this madness. We must stop being spectators to our own destruction. The terror state tactics, the expansionist agendas, and the proxy games must be called out for what they are: a crime against humanity. The history of 2026 will either be a story of how we stood up and demanded peace, or it will be the final chapter in the Book of Man. We cannot eat oil, we cannot breathe fire, and we cannot live on a map of scorched earth. The maps of Greater Israel or Islamic hegemony mean nothing in a world where the water is poisoned and the sky is black. This is your world. This is your life. And the clock is ticking. Will you wake up before the light of the last explosion closes your eyes forever? The story of Iran and Israel is a tragedy of brothers turned into monsters. It is a warning that when we choose ideology over humanity, everyone loses. The fire is already here. The only question left is, do we have the courage to put it out? Thank you for watching. Share this truth before it's too late. The world is watching.